This podcast is brought to you by Hoare Chartered Accountants. Hoare Chartered Accountants are based in Galway City and are a leading provider of audit, accountancy and taxation services. For more information, visit hoarecharteredaccountants.ie. Now you're welcome along to the Maroon and White pod. So we have our county final pairings in the Senior Football Championship. It will be Salthill-Knocknacarra versus Maigh Cuilinn at Derby, a repeat of the 2022 county final. Both of those sides advanced by the narrowest margins. Salthill-Knocknacarra defeating Corofin 117 to 115, and then in the other game, Maigh Cuilinn winning 18 points to 114 over Tuam Stars. I'm delighted to be joined by Barry Kelly, former Salthill-Knocknacarra footballer and former Tuam Stars coach. Barry, obviously, we had a keen interest in the semi-finals at the weekend.
I did, yeah, Paul. Thanks for having me this evening. Yeah, I really enjoyed the weekend. Pearse Stadium yesterday. I thought it was kind of a special occasion with the lights. The pitch looked fantastic. They had kind of the GA logo etched into it, and yeah, when you walked in the gates, there was just a buzz around the place, I thought. So I think the lights definitely add to the occasion. And then the good weather we had kind of in the week leading into it, the pitch was solid. So good, quick games, some great football on show. So yeah, it was a very enjoyable evening.
Obviously, there was a lot made about the lights and everything in the lead up to the game, and there were the first semi-finals under lights in Pearse Stadium. It did really feel like yesterday evening it really worked, and surprisingly, we didn't really have that Pearse Stadium breeze either yesterday evening.
Yeah, I think we were all shocked with that. So although if watching the second game, you think maybe there was a hidden gale there. But yeah, I think other counties have obviously had lights in their main pitches for a number of years, so it's become kind of certainly down in Castlebar and Mayo where I'm from originally. Evening, county finals played on a Saturday night and stuff has been happening for a while. But Pearse Stadium now having lights, I think, just adds an extra option to Galway. It doesn't mean that, every semi-final or quarter-final has to be there. But certainly when the weather is good, it's a great option to have. And I think players enjoy it, I would say. And, being able to play on a Saturday evening and maybe go for a few drinks afterwards or something instead of Sunday and you're straight back into work the next day. I think players like that.
Talking about the two semi-finals in the Senior Football Championship, Barry, I don't think we've ever had two semi-finals as good as that. Tuam Maigh Cuilinn going right down to the wire, last kick of the game. Tuam, unfortunately, that free tailing wide. And then looking at the Salthill Corofin game, it had everything and the save from Donald O'Sullivan at the end. They were just two fantastic games of football.
Absolutely, yeah. And I suppose it's interesting, that was the semi-final pairing last year. So, when there's a repeat pairing like that, it often brings up good games because, they're going to be competitive teams kind of split from the year before. And whoever lost last year is gunning for revenge. So I think it brought out the best in all the teams at the weekend, and two cracking games played out.
If we start with Salthill-Knocknacarra and Corofin, Salthill-Knocknacarra getting over Corofin 117 to 115. Before we even look at the game, you obviously lined up for the Salthill-Knocknacarra for a number of years. Uh, were you delighted just even? I'd say it probably took you a while to sort of figure out what happened in that game.
Yeah, that game was a bit of a head scratcher for sure. Like, I suppose out in Tuam last year in the semi-final, it was a really tough start for Salt Hill. 20 minutes in, Corofin had a big lead built up, and it just looked like they weren't going to let it go. So I think the Salthill-Knocknacarra players would have been very disappointed with how they started that game, and then Corofin are so professional. It's very hard to get back into a game when they've built up a big lead. So I'm sure there was huge motivation within the group this year for that not to happen 2 years in a row. And the opposite happened. So, Salthill had an absolutely blistering start. I think they were, 10 points up after 12 minutes or something crazy like that, which no one saw coming. So yeah, then second half, completely different story, and biting our nails at the end of it really, but just delighted to get over the line and into a final. That's the main thing. So yeah, we'll take it for sure.
In fairness to these players, Barry, last year was a really difficult day at the office against Corofin in Tuam Stadium, and that obviously sat with them for quite a while over the winter. And then with the six county players, there's been a lot of pressure and attention on the Salthill-Knocknacarra team from the outset of the championship. But for them to get a victory like this, no matter how they did against Corofin, it's huge for the group, really, when you consider 12 months ago it was a hammer into the same opposition.
Absolutely, yeah. I think there was a lot of pressure, external pressure, with, I suppose it is unusual for a club team to maybe have six county players. And that narrative seemed to grow over the summer, which obviously was something that the group themselves couldn't control, but they appear to have handled it quite well. And yeah, I think that's a huge win for them yesterday. We don't have too many wins in big championship games against Corofin, so I think that's going to stand to the group, and bring them on. Yeah.
Do you always feel there's a pressure when you're playing for Salthill-Knocknacarra?
In what sense?
Just that I suppose there's always nearly an expectation, or people will tip them as a team to win the championship. And if you look back at it over the last few years, you obviously won it in 12, and then they were in the final in 22. When you look, they've been in only those two finals over the last decade.
Yeah. I think, any team, any club that feels they can be contending at the latter stages of a championship, those players are going to feel a bit of pressure, and you want that pressure. You want to be competing in the latter stages. So I don't think Salthill-Knocknacarra is any different there. Um, Obviously, Corofin's performance in Galway over the last, whatever number of years, 20, 30 years, has just been phenomenal. And everyone else has been playing catch up there. So, I experienced that in my years playing with Salthill. Corofin were just at a different level to every other team in Galway. But certainly Salthill-Knocknacarra would like to get back to the top table, and getting into semi-finals, getting into finals. We weren't doing that every year in my time. This group are quite competitive now over the last 3 or 4 years, back to another final, and really it's about getting over the line.
Yeah, I think there was another final actually in the last decade you were in against Corofin as well, if I'm not wrong. I think it was the year Val Daly was over you, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
we played them in Pearse Stadium. I think it was 3 or 4 points maybe in
yeah,
the end of that game, but that was kind of the Corofin team that was winning multiple All Irelands. So yeah, it was a tough station for us.
yeah. Even looking at the start of this game, Barry, as we mentioned it, Rob gets a point from a ridiculous angle after 1 minute. Dara Silk replies with a 45, but Sawtill Knocknacarra's response then. Daniel O'Flaherty gets a point, Charlie Power gets a point. Rob then adds a two-pointer, then he gets a goal. Charlie Power gets a point, and Rob Finnerty gets a 2 point free then to put Sawtill Knocknacarra a 1-8 to 1 point up. The start is something else, but even I think during that period, the efficiency of Salthill-Knocknacarra is really impressive.
Yeah, I think Rob's first point was just a statement of intent. Like, you'd probably be telling him not to shoot. If it was any other player, you'd be saying, "What are you doing?" But I think he was inside the 13 or, just on the 13, very tight angle. But he had made up his mind, I'm going to pop this. And when that goes over, then brings confidence to the team, settles the team down straight away. But I think their efficiency during the game was ridiculously high. Very few wides over the course of the game, and 2 point attempts in the first half. They were all flying over. I think maybe four from five shots or something like that. So that really put the squeeze on Corofin because I felt in the first half, there wasn't a huge, so there was a 13-point gap at half time. It wasn't a 13-point gap in terms of possession, I wouldn't have thought. But Corofin efficiency was unusually poor in that first half. And Salthill's was, ridiculously high. So I think certainly the ruthlessness that Salthill showed starting the game, to be 10 points up after 12 minutes or something, that then affects the opposition. They need to start getting scores on the board. They maybe it affects shot selection, all those sort of things. So it was a whirlwind start to the game for Salthill.
Is it fair enough to say when John Maher goes off the pitch then on 17 minutes that Salthill begin to struggle around the middle and maybe aren't going as well as they were early on when he was there in the middle because you could really see when he went off in 17 minutes he was a big loss.
Yeah, John is a huge loss to any team. Like he's the type of player he is. Obviously, Salthill have a few county players, but the type of player that John is, he does so much work. He brings so much energy to things, commitment, just physicality, everything you kind of want in a middle third player. So whether it's with Galway or with Salthill, when he goes off, you're going to notice a difference there for sure. I thought for the rest of the half, the team did well. Like they were still keeping the scoreboard ticking. They were responding to any scores Corofin did get. So I think in the first half or the second part of the first half, they still were doing motoring well without him. But I suppose in the second half, then it became apparent that they were struggling on kickouts a lot, and that's something that John would have added greatly to.
In one sense, it's great to be in the county final, but it does look the discomfort John Maher was in that he will be up against a 2 week turnaround. I think he was in a boot and crutches after the game. He was stretchered off. It's devastation in one sense because I think every football fan in Galway would love to see John Maher playing in the county final.
Yeah, I don't have any insight on the injury, but look, if John does miss out, it's devastating for him personally. Like, John is a great lad. He's kind of everything you'd want in a club man that plays for the county. He'll show up at any events you want, presenting to underage or speaking to them. And the way his career, he's built his career with Galway is hugely admirable. He well documented. He was in there in his first stint, and maybe things didn't go to plan, and he could have gone in a different direction, but he kind of doubled down, just worked really hard and kind of backed himself and got back in there, and then he's just gone from strength to strength. So anyone turning up watching county final, you want to see the best players in the county play, and John is surely one of those. So it's going to be a big loss to the occasion and to the game if he can't make it.
Mark Mannion's point then on the stroke at half time to it's on 31 minutes. He puts Salthill 113 to 3 ahead. Charlie Power gets a score then as well, and Dylan Canny gets one to finish the half. But I think Mark Mannion's point and his 2 point effort It just emphasised everything that was good about Salthill-Knocknacarra in that first half.
Yeah, I think there was a real confidence in their attack. The turnovers were kept to a minimum. They were getting shots off on most attacks, and then when most of the shots are flying over, it kind of has a momentum effect. So Mark's one there. Maybe he doesn't take that shot if it's a tighter game. But when three 2-pointers have gone over already, there's a confidence within the team, and he stepped up, and it was a great score. So yeah, it probably did typify how that half went for Salthill.
In fairness, you do have to give huge credit to Corofin. If you look up at the scoreboard and you see 114 to 4, Salthill score 17, Corofin 4, 13 points behind at the break. I know there are rules and everything, but very easy to just sort of not throw in the towel, but like 13 points down in a game of football like that and to still throw everything at Salthill Knocknacarra in that first or in that second half of something else.
Yeah, they put in a phenomenal second half. Not unexpected in my book. Like Corofin haven't got to where they've got to without being hugely competitive, and I know they would have been really hurt in the dressing room at halftime and frustrated. I'm sure with they had a lot of sloppy turnovers. I think maybe 10 in the first half. Their shooting was off, shot selection, they had a couple of shots that kind of went up into the sky, and you don't associate that with Corofin. So I think their fundamentals, they would have been disappointed with their fundamentals. And they came out in the second half, and like they really tore into the game. They dominated the ball. They had phenomenal amount of I think maybe was it they won 10 of Salt Hill's kickouts in the second half.
Yeah,
Um,
Kieran Brady just
and
seemed to win everything in that second half.
Yeah, he really stormed into the game right from when he came on. He won the first kick out. He was hugely aggressive in the air, and then any ball that went on the ground, they were hoovering up, 70-80% of it. So they had a huge amount of possession in that second half, and I think they're shooting again just a little bit off at the start. Like they went on a run then, kind of midway through the half where everything was going over, but they had a couple of shots at the start of the half again that were just a little bit loose. Um, but overall, anything they asked themselves of in the dressing room at half time, they left it all on the pitch and could very easily have found themselves back in the final.
It's a start too, wasn't it? Like by 38 minutes to have it all back to 115 to 1-7 with 22 minutes remaining in that second half.
Yeah, and I think what started to come to the fore, what you associate with Corofin is, running off the shoulder, the pop ball into the full forward line, and someone coming at pace. Liam Silk or Dylan McHugh breaking from deep. So all those things came to the fore in the second half. Like Dara Silk's goal, I think you have a lovely little ball inside from was it Ian Burke, and then Liam Silk, pops it across to Dara. Like they're the scores that you associate with Corofin. And you started to see a lot of that in the second half. They were running hard off the shoulder. Ian Burke was winning a lot of ball out in front and laying it off as he does very well. So yeah, they really found their mojo in that second half, and Salt Hill struggled to deal with it for long stretches of it.
I know we talked about it off air, Barry, but Jack McCabe gets one, Kieran Malloy gets one, and Jack McCabe gets another in 43 to make it 115 to 110. Then Dylan Canny gets a point, Kerr get pulled for the three up breach. Sawdell haven't scored in quite a while. They get the free in front of the goal, obviously, with the three up breach, and Rob stretches it out to 116 to 110. That was just a score, and it came at a crucial time that Sawdell just needed to get a score on the board.
Absolutely, yeah. Like Dylan Canny had kicked it wasn't just an ordinary score. It was one of them kind of boomers that curls in. So a really kind of inspirational score. And then everyone was kind of confused for a while afterwards about what was going on, and then came aware of the breach. So a tap over point for Salt Hill then. So instead of it back to four, it's pushed out to six. Yeah, that was a lifesaver for Salt Hill at that time. Now it didn't check Corfin's momentum for long. They still pushed on and kept going, but it would have been really tight if that had been allowed.
Yeah, as you mentioned, you talked about the wides there, and I know Corofin got it back to 116 to 115. Keane Murphy had a chance at a crucial time, and it just went wide. But there were, even when they had it back to one and they were kind of clawing it back into this game, there was still one or two crucial wides when they eventually look back at some stage that they'll be disappointed with.
Yeah, I think overall in the second half, they'll be quite happy with their shooting. They left a few behind them, but in general, they had a huge volume of shots in the second half. They got a lot of scores on the board. There's always one or two that you'd like to have back. And I suppose when it gets into the closing minutes of the game, they're the ones that everyone remember. But yeah, that was an unfortunate one. I think it was maybe a tight-ish angle, but he backed himself and it didn't come off.
What are you thinking at that stage in the stands? Because I know Charlie Power had a fist of point Everton. It looked like he'd sort of sealed it, and that actually goes wide. Now, if Nolan gets the score that Salthill needed, the fist of point 117 to 115. But what are you thinking at that stage then?
Yeah, well, the last 15, 20 minutes of the second half was tough going for any Salthill-Knocknacarra supporter. There was huge momentum there with Corofin, and we were struggling to check that and really find it hard to win primary possession. I think Cathal Sweeney, if I remember correctly, came up with a huge break there for that
Mhm.
attack, and Salt Hill kind of took the sting out of the play, held it for a long period of time, and then got that fisted point. So I think it was a very well worked score by the team. And then you're thinking, okay, it's 2 points. They're going to go for a two-pointer when Corofin won the last possession. And then they just Dylan McHugh injected a serious bit of pace into the attack, and next thing, Liam Silk is in front of goal with an opportunity to win the game for Corofin. So it was a crazy kind of finish to the game. It was a crazy game, and it had a really crazy finish. That ball could have easily ended up in the net. We were just thanking our lucky stars that it stayed out.
In fairness to Donald O'Sullivan for the initial stage, he does excellently. I think he's just excellent at making himself so big in the goals. Like he's obviously a tall man, but just even the way he spread himself, I think it did slightly put Curfin off a small bit there.
Yeah, he's a big presence in the goal. I think Liam Silk was coming onto the ball at a lot of pace, and there was a defender coming across. So I think if he collected the ball into his hands, he was going to take contact, and he obviously decided to hit it on the volley. He was just very unlucky. I think it was a good effort and a good save, and then the rebound after that could have gone anywhere. So we're just thankful it stayed out.
I think we can both be assured, Barry, that Curfin may not be in the final, but even when you see their second team today and you see some of the performances, I think we can be assured that they're definitely not going anywhere.
Absolutely no. As I said earlier, they could easily be in the final. I'm sure they will look back on that first half and wonder why things just didn't run for them. If they produced a more even performance, they could very well be in the final. Like on the flip side, I'm sure Salthill-Knocknacarra will look at that second half and they won't be happy with it in terms of how much possession they got and how they weren't able to check Corofin's momentum.
Just on Corofin, even when you look back at the group and you see they had a comprehensive win against one of Abbey, it was comprehensive enough against Letchermore. They drew with Milltown and they really cruised past Dunmore McHale's in that quarter final. Compared to Salthill, because in fairness to Salthill not card, they had some tests in the group. If you look particularly at the Mountbellew My Law game for them and Duke Derry game, did it maybe come against Corofin in that first half, not coming in with maybe a significant test into the semi-final?
Yeah, hard to know. I think, Corofin themselves can only answer that, but Dunmore were very impressive in the group stages, I thought. So when that quarter-final draw was made, I thought that would be a competitive game for Corofin. And obviously they put up a big score. So, um, you know, they came in with a lot of confidence. Whether whether they were overconfident, I wouldn't have thought so. Probably just sometimes a game can just get away from you. Like Salt Hill, everything they shot in those first 10 or 12 minutes went over the bar. And then you find yourself 10 points down, and that just, you know, puts pressure on your decision making, and maybe you start to do things that they're not used to. So whether they would have benefited from a more difficult route or not, I'm not so sure. I think they would have played strong challenge games. I think they were well ready for the game. Just they'd like to have that first 10 or 15 minutes of the first half back, I think.
Is it the perfect situation for Salthill-Knocknacarra to be going into a county final knowing that I suppose the last thing they probably think about is that second half performance won't be good enough. Is that the perfect, I suppose, situation to go in now, knowing that they have to improve if they want to get their hands on Frank Box?
Yeah, I think there's certainly plenty for Finian and his management team to go after there in the second half. It wasn't a complete performance. If they kept what they've been doing in the first half, which was, it was unrealistic to keep that up in the second half, that level of performance and shooting efficiency. But um, on their kind of key metrics, which is I would expect winning your primary possession, that's probably the one that would really disappoint them in the second half. So I think plenty to work on there. Obviously, John's situation then is going to be important for the group. So just putting whatever if John doesn't make the final, just putting that to one side and driving on and getting ready for a huge battle with Maigh Cuilinn.
Yeah, I think some really big performances from Salthill-Knocknacarra when you look all across the pitch. Donald O'Sullivan, Evan Wynn and Mark Mannion I thought were really good in defence. Michael Kidd fairly ran himself into the ground too, around the middle, and Daniel O'Flaherty, particularly in the first half, very impressive. And obviously, Rob was in very good form in attack. Just on your former teammate Finian, what do you think he's bringing as a manager to this Salthill team?
I'd say he's bringing a lot, to be honest. Like uh, any guy with that amount of inter-county experience, first of all, has been a part of, I don't know, 7 or 8 set inter-county setups, different. So he's seen a lot of different management teams, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and then he knows the club inside out. So he knows the players and the culture. And I think Finian and Sean, would be the first to say that they had a nice introduction to kind of club management with John O'Mahony there in the first couple of years. So they were able to kind of learn the ropes and have John helping them along the way. So I think that worked out really well for the club. Finian very organized, very passionate, very he was always kind of very tactically astute from a defensive point of view. I wouldn't put any of Salt Hill's efficiency in the first half down to Finian now. I give Sean the credit for that. But yeah, Finian is doing a great job there, and he'll have the boys ready for the final.
If we look down at the first game, then Barry between Maigh Cuilinn and Tuam, Maigh Cuilinn just doing enough in the end to win this one against Tuam Stars, similar enough to last year when you're involved, went right down to the wire again.
Yeah, it was a close game last year, and a lot of the same players on both sides this year, same management teams, so a lot of familiarity, I suppose, and it went right down to the wire again this time. Um, yeah, small margins really. I think that this game probably started a bit slowly. I think it was maybe only 4 points all after 22, 23 minutes.
Yeah.
And then the goal kind of for Tuam sparked the scoring into life. Um, so yeah, I think from that point on, then it was kind of tit for tat all the way. Moy Cullen got a good stretch in the second half where they maybe got June went 5 points up. Moy Cullen got 5 points in a row. That was a real kind of power stretch for them. And then ding dong right down to last kick of the game really.
Yeah, as you mentioned there earlier on, David Wynn and Niall Walsh put Mike Cullen up 2 points to no score after 8 minutes. Then Jack Gergan and Keane Mitchell reply to make it 2-all, and then Desi Keneally with a free and Niall Walsh make it 4-2, and then Luke Davin and Shane McGlinchey reply to make it um 4-all after 21 minutes. It did seem even that early on that it was a small bit cagey, but then there was both sides, I think, in those opening 20 minutes probably be disappointed with a couple of turnovers and disappointed with a couple of their shot selection as well in those opening 20 minutes.
Yeah, I think Mike Cullen probably settled a bit better into the game, and their shooting efficiency left them down. So I think they created some nice opportunities. They just didn't take them. I think on the Tuam side, it was more turnovers. They were, struggling to get shots off. They were probably just a little bit sloppy with looking after the ball. Uh, and then after that kind of goal, I think both sides really settled into the game and it was high quality stuff then. Lots of good attack and play, some serious scores, and it was a really exciting game.
Keane Mitchell, in fairness, does excellently to stay alert when the ball came in and dropped to it, and Pierce Greeley just fumbled it, and he was alert then to finish it. Phil McDonough replies to make it 1-4 to 5, and then Jamie Murphy gets a point to make it 1-5 to 5. It did sort of feel like Tuam were beginning to get on top at that stage, and is there maybe one or two regrets when they were on top in that first half that maybe they weren't further ahead, because it did sort of feel around that period that they were starting to take control of this one.
Yeah, I think certainly they finished the half the stronger team, and there was a couple of attacks they had where it looked like they had numbers and potentially goal opportunities, and they kind of maybe took the points or settled for the points on those. But it did look like they had the momentum at that stage. Uh, but Mike Cullen are such a strong team, strong running team, and Niall Walsh was probably causing some trouble for Tuam. So Mike Cullen's direct running is a challenge for any team. They're always going to penetrate defenses and create shooting opportunities. Um, so maybe Tuam could have been a point or two further ahead, but I I think it was a tight first half, and all to play for really at halftime.
Yeah, 1-7 to 7 at the break. Tuam Stars led in that game. It obviously talked there about Mike Collins' running game, and that it has been huge for them over the last 2 years. But is it sort of a different thing this year now with the new rules? When you have Desi inside, you obviously need to put a lot of focus on him and man mark him. But then when you do man mark Desi and keep him somewhat quiet, there is a real headache with Niall Walsh at 11 then.
Yeah, I think Niall Walsh missed the latter stages of the championship last year, and he was certainly on it from the first minute yesterday. When I've seen him in the past, he's been more in the full forward line. I haven't seen him at 11 as much, but I was hugely impressed with him. He was kind of very direct, running, and a really good shooter, kind of creating, punching holes in the defense, creating opportunities. And then, you know, Maigh Cuilinn have other threats in that forward line as well. They've kind of a nice variety to that forward line. Fionn McDonough obviously takes watching. He's a big, strong man. He's able to create opportunities from nothing really. So they have a lot of variety in that attack, and they do kind of test any defense.
If you look then, Ben O'Connell gets a point straight after the break. Paul Kelly replies, a Jack Gergan point from play, and then a free 1-10 to 8 on 34 minutes. You're looking, and Tuam Stars are four ahead, and you can even sense it with Mike Cullen because on 35 minutes, Desi gets the point, but then Peter Cook is on, and they know this game is starting to get away from him, and they need him on the pitch.
Yeah, I suppose there was, everyone knew that Peter was back in the country, and it was whether he would start or not. But he was always going to see game time, a player of that caliber, and it certainly gave Mike Cullen a big lift when he came into the game. So when Tuam went 5 points up, if they could have got another score or two at that stage, it could have made things really challenging for Maigh Cuilinn to come back. But in fairness to Maigh Cuilinn, and I suppose the experience that they have, they probably realised the game was starting to slip away from them, and they put in a really powerful 10 minutes. I think they got 5 points without reply. They put a real squeeze on the Tuam kick out, and they were very aggressive in their kick out press. They were committing, sometimes five men to the inside line, and they have huge bodies around the middle. They've four or five really big men, so they will test any team out there, and obviously bringing Peter Cook in just adds to that.
Yeah, because even there, as you mentioned, Desi Niall Walsh and Johnny Maloney get scores to make it 1-10 to 13. Um, then Ronan Colleran gets a great point, and Cormac Walter follows that up 1-12 to 13. But in fairness, Mike Cullen's response after that, Cook with a 2-pointer, and then a point, and then another Johnny Maloney point. And Phil McDonough, as you mentioned, those 5 points in a row there to make it 1-12 to 18, like it really showed that Mike Cullen really weathered that storm, and obviously Tuam do have a free that they missed at that stage. I think it was Jack Gergan, and it was to put them up by one at that stage, and but Mike Cullen really did weather that storm and took control of this one.
Yeah, I think Tuam did well to stop Moy Cullen's initial burst. Like when they got five in a row, Ronan Colleran came in, kicked a brilliant point off his left. That was a huge score for Tuam. And then they added to that. So they went two up again. And I suppose that's where Peter Cook's ability comes into play. So he kicks a monster of a two-pointer. He had a Tuam defender on his boot, and it just was one of them real galvanizing scores for the team. Uh, Tuam then went up. I think, as you said, they had a free in front of the posts. That they would have been hopeful of scoring and unfortunately hit the inside of the post. And Maigh Cuilinn got the break there and went up the pitch, and Cook kicked another boomer of a point. So, he was really pivotal in those closing kind of 5 minutes of the game. Those scores were pivotal for Maigh Cuilinn, and then they added on another two, so pushed it out to a 3 point gap. And in fairness, Tuam responded again. There's a great never say die attitude within the group. And Maigh Cuilinn, kicked a boomer of a point
Top
himself up
scorer,
the
wasn't
other
it?
end. Fantastic. Yeah, I think, we're all delighted with the attacking play, I suppose, that the new rules have brought in. And Cook's shot, Cook's 2 pointer, Shea's 2 pointer, their shots maybe that just weren't wouldn't have been taken on in last year's semi-final because um the value wasn't there. Whereas now with the 2 point option, it's encouraging players to show that skill, and everyone wants to see um strikes like that. So yeah, big score from Shea brought Tuam back in to 1 point deficit, and they managed to work a free at the death, which was a difficult free just on the perimeter of the arc, dropped short, and then could have gone anywhere. I think it was Connor Doherty got the fist to it, and looked like it might end up in the net, but just went wide.
Just with that, and it's not to single out like Tuam's frees, but when you see them miss one or two like that, and you see obviously Brian Mannion wasn't fit enough to play yesterday, it does just show that he is a big loss because he's been so crucial for Tuam, like with frees and from play over the last number of years.
Yeah, everyone is aware of Brian's ability. He's definitely one of the best forwards in the county, and he would have certainly contributed to the scoreboard yesterday for Tuam. So, they've had a tough year with injuries. Like Conor Rattigan is a huge player for Tuam. He did a knee injury earlier in the summer. Um, and then Brian missing the quarterfinal and the semi-final, another big loss. In fairness to the group, they didn't let that affect them. It was kind of next man up, and they put in a real 15-man shift plus subs yesterday. But there's no doubt that you do miss players of Brian's caliber.
It's a difficult one for Tuam, isn't it? And it's always difficult when you're defeated to the same opposition at the semi-final stage for the second year running.
Absolutely, yeah. I would say the lads are gutted today. I think there was very little in that game. Like if Peter Cook stays in America, or Tuam into the final, quite possibly. That's the margins you're talking about, and as you said, Cook back in there, and you're missing Brian on the other side. Um, so I think if that game ended in a draw, no one would have complained about watching a bit of extra time with the way the quality of fare that was on show. So it's going to be a tough loss for the group to take for sure. You always want to go one step further than you did the previous year. But I think there was very little in that game.
Just a word on Cook because to come home from America and have that much of an influence in a game, and obviously he's been away, he hasn't played for Maigh Cuilinn throughout this year's championship, but to be able to turn it on like that when the stakes are so high, it's something else, isn't it?
Yeah, I think he's clearly a big game player. He's performed very well in county finals for Maigh Cuilinn. He's performed very well against Salthill a couple of times, and he has that shot, that inside of the right boot shot that just kind of floats over. You see it starting outside the post, and then it breaks your heart curling in. Um, so he's a phenomenal player. Like he can do it all. He's really strong in the air, big physical man, covers the ground really well, and then he has as good a long distance shooter as there is in the county. So having a player like him to come on with whatever 15, 20 minutes to go is a huge weapon in Moy Cullen's arsenal.
Just with Maigh Cuilinn, we've seen him so much over the championship. You look at the quarter final out there, it's tight early on. It looks like it's going to go down to the wire. And same last year when they met them in the quarter final. It's the same last year against Tuam, and even Saturday. It's the way they're able to finish and see out games. It's really impressive.
Absolutely, yeah. I think this is their fifth final, is it, in 6 years? So, they've been one of the best two teams in Galway effectively over that period. So it's a really strong group of players. Their physical ability is probably unmatched in the county. The amount of players that are over 6 foot, and that does kind of drain the opposition over 60 minutes. So, they run hard. They're a physical team, and they're able to keep going for that full 60 minutes. So you can often see them coming strong with 15 minutes to go and finishing out games well. It's certainly a key characteristic of that group.
Just with Mike Cullen as well to mention, Conor Corcoran obviously didn't play yesterday. James McLaughlin um, didn't play. Neil Mulcahy only came on, as we mentioned. Cook's first game back. They lost Owen Gallagher this year. He's gone back to his club in Antrim. Like Colin Clancy and the management team deserve huge credit here because I know in the earlier games we would have seen more of the younger brigade start throughout the championship, but they're still down a few key players, but they've showed big character to get back into another county final.
Yeah, every management group would like to have their best players available every day out. But what you often see is, first round of the championship, first couple of rounds, you're missing a couple of players, whether it's America or injuries, and then things generally tend to sharpen up when you get to a quarter final, semi-final stage. But integrating county players as well, trying to give them a break maybe after the county season, but still trying to integrate them into the team and into the group. All that is challenging for managers. So Moy Cullen certainly look in a good place now. They're into the final. They've got minutes into Cook, minutes into Mulcahy. Maybe they've more players available for the final. So they certainly have managed that well.
It's interesting now when we look at it, Salthill and Mike Cullen repeated the 2022 final, as I mentioned. For a lot of these players too, they're friends. They've went to school together, so it sort of adds something to this county final, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a keen rivalry between the two groups. There's a couple of teams, underage teams, that would have been very competitive between the two clubs. So these players would know each other well. They'd have gone to secondary school with each other. So it'll certainly be an entertaining 2 weeks with both clubs. And I think it was an excellent county final that they played before. Very close, went right down to the wire, and I expect this game will be no different. I expect it to be very close and decided in the last 5 or 10 minutes.
How did you find the county final build up as a player?
Um, it's a while ago now, so yeah, I played in a couple, I suppose, at my home club back in Mayo. Back then it was a different kind of ball game. You're, 3 or 4 weeks maybe between a semi-final and a final, or there was certainly longer gaps. Now the 2 weeks, 2 weeks, I think helps players. You get your recovery after the game, you get a couple of decent sessions in, and then you're tapering down again. Injuries like John, I suppose, those are the challenges when you pick up an injury and you've only got the 2 weeks left. But these players, like, it's Maigh Cuillinn's fifth final, so they're well used to it. A lot of these Salt Hill guys would have played in the final with Maigh Cuilinn a couple of years ago. They would have played in underage finals, so um, I expect they'll both be tuned up and ready for the day, and we should have a great game in store.
Do you feel there's pressure on Mike Cullen considering it's the third final in a row? They've came up in the last two county finals short against Corofin.
I think a group will have their own pressure. I think the key is to avoid the external noise. So those Maigh Cuilinn players are competitive. They'll be putting pressure on themselves because they think they are the best team in the county and they want to win a county final and show everyone that. Um, whether there's a bit of external pressure, I suppose, that can build up when you've got so close and maybe haven't got over the line. And I know last year's final, I think, would have been a disappointment for them. But they're an experienced group, and I think they'll be ready to go on the day.
Who do you think's gonna win the county final?
I think Salt Hill will do it. I think this team has been coming, and I think it's going to be very close. But I'm hoping that a couple of the Salt Hill forwards will have a good day, and maybe that might just get them an extra point or two over the line.
Great stuff, Barry. Well, that's all we do have time for on today's show. Barry, thanks a million for coming on.